Morning, Faye. It's great to have you here. For people that don't know you, you are Faye Woodhead. You are a very experienced leader in the world of HR and talent acquisition, having worked with large, complex global organizations, and currently with, now you say it's a scale-up business, but in itself it's actually quite a large, complex organization with lots of interesting talent acquisition challenges. So thanks for sharing your perspectives with us today. So the first question I'd like to ask is, this relationship between a TA function and the sort of hiring manager is absolutely crucial. Yeah. So what do you think makes a good relationship? What are the attributes for that a good partnership between a TA function and hiring managers?
Ken, well, you've just used the word that I always try and use, which is partnership. It needs to be a relationship that is full of trust, that is transparent, and I believe always on. So recruiting isn't something that starts with an open requisition or a resignation. It's not a once a year activity. And I believe it starts with a commercial understanding of the business. The recruiter needs to know what good looks like. The hiring manager needs to be transparent around their business plan and what they're looking for and the skills that they're going to require. And I really believe that using data and technology and analytics can help with that, but it all comes down to trust and transparency. And I think the only way to build that trust is through demonstrating results. So a good relationship is not a once a year I need to hire somebody. It's always on. The recruiter needs to understand the business and understand and anticipate and be able to see through analytics what the business is going to need and how to go around sourcing that hire.
And on that point, what do you think are the sort of key analytics that are most useful for you?
So we often talk about quality of hire, and ultimately quality of hire can be made up of various things, and I think the world is waking up to HR not being something that is all about relationships. It's to do with data and analytics and relationships. And so quality for me looks at not only time to hire, but time in role, retention, time to productivity. It looks at year zero or year one turnover. It looks at culture add. It looks at really whether the hires are able to deliver on the business goals for which they've been hired to do. And so I think all of the data that firms have around that should be fed into a talent acquisition strategy so that we can see where we've had results, where we've been able to demonstrate that value add, and building that into that relationship with the hiring manager.
So you've actually rather elegantly segged into the next question I wanted to ask you, which is, what makes a talent acquisition function genuinely strategic? And obviously, facilitating quality of hire is going to be a part of that. But what else?
So I actually think that talent acquisition is strategic. Talent is the most significant source of competitive differentiation in people-run businesses. And the people that we hire will be the people that enable the firm to reach its strategic goals, to have that success, and ultimately to provide shareholder return. So if we're not recruiting the right people in the right way, businesses are not going to be able to deliver on their strategic goals, which brings me back to the point around that partnership and the fact that TA professionals need to be business professionals. They need to understand the market. They need to understand the internal market. They need to, as we say in talent acquisition, fish where the fishes are. Mm-hmm. No good looking for different skill sets in the same old places. They need to influence, and they need to be experience gurus, experience of candidates, experience of hiring managers, and experiences of our own HR functions.
Fantastic. It was very interesting. I mentioned the Entrepreneur Summit we ran yesterday, and we had a sort of guest speaker who had grown 4 billion-dollar businesses, and he was asked to just share what his key insights were in doing that. And the very first point he made was recruitment.
Yeah.
Very first point. They said you start with great recruitment, and then there's a whole bunch of other stuff that follows. They said, but you start with great recruitment, and it was a very compelling justification, I think, for your point about the strategic importance of TA.
Yeah.
So the next question I wanted to ask is around global markets. Now, you've got great experience in a whole range of different markets, and I think we can often be perhaps too focused on the kind of the Western sort of developed economies. But of course, you know, increasingly emerging markets are becoming very sophisticated. Many of them already are. What do you think are some of the sort of nuances or advice that you would have for you know, TA leaders going into, you know, those markets perhaps for the first time?
Yeah, it's a great question, and maybe I'll give just a sentence of context around MSCI's recruitment and our employee footprint. So you mentioned we are sizable but small. We are 3,800 people. Over 2/3 of our employees are in emerging markets. So we have big offices in Monterrey in Mexico, in Mumbai, in Pune, in Budapest, and in Manila. And so the majority of our hiring also therefore sits in those locations. And it is very different. The career aspirations of talent in those markets is different. The career expectations, the delivery of promise is really important. And so I would say that with any employer brand and talent acquisition strategy, you have to have a global umbrella, but you have to localize. One size certainly doesn't fit all. And if we think about matching career aspirations of talent in those emerging markets, we really have to emphasize what firms have to offer, and that has to come through in the talent acquisition process. We know that talent is, and particularly more junior talent, so over 70% of our firm is under the age of 40, are learning sponges. Everybody wants to learn, but we find that in our emerging markets and in that demographic from an age perspective, learning and development are absolutely critical. And we also see it come through in our engagement surveys as the #1 reason that people are engaged at MSCI. So it's not just about offering the job, it's about selling the career path and the career opportunities and bringing to the fore exactly what somebody can expect in an environment like that. So in summary, it's about really understanding your market, really understanding the differences and really being authentic about that in your value proposition.
Fantastic. So final question, you talk about the different career aspirations. And again, I don't like to generalize, but I mean, are there kind of distinctions that you see between, you know, developing markets and, you know, the sort of more mature markets in terms of career aspirations?
I too don't like to generalize, and I think one of the most dangerous things you can ever do is put somebody in a generation bucket or a geographical bucket or a gender bucket or anything else, because it just doesn't work. The intersectionality is incredible, and everybody, as we know, is different. But I do believe, and the research backs this up, that different locations, different people, different cultures have slightly different aspirations as to how they want to drive their own career. And so the important part for all HR functions, not just recruiting elements of HR, is understanding the nuances, asking their people, doing the benchmark research, understanding the trends in the market, and being nimble enough to deliver on that. So what worked 2 or 3 years ago is not going to work now or in 2 or 3 years' time. And so brings me back to the point around talent acquisition professionals needing to understand the market, needing to understand what people are asking for and expecting in their careers. And we've just seen over 2020, I don't think we can go through an interview without mentioning the pandemic, but a huge shift in the way that we work and the way that we've had to work. The challenge now will be understanding how that translates into the future and the differences and the nuances between emerging markets and developed markets with regards to the potential for hybrid workforce. So we have to stay up to date. You have to understand what's going on the ground, and you have to be able to deploy that very quickly.
Fantastic. I think there is such a rich amount of content in there that hopefully anyone thinking about getting involved with our talent acquisition awards can help to kind of guide them and influence them about what a good award would look like. So I think there was some amazing content in there, Faye. So thank you so much for that. That was really interesting.